Welcome back to 84 Square Feet. My name is Robert. Happy to have you along again today. We are going to be reading through some more of the letters from lockdown. That's right, these are some of the letters that I wrote to my mom while I was incarcerated in the state of Nevada. During that time, I did 2 years in solitary confinement. And these are some of the letters that I wrote back to her, just kind of describing what was going on, some of the crazy stuff that was happening, things that I had to go through and deal with in addition to the punishment of being in solitary confinement. So you would think sometimes that would be enough, but you would be wrong. So, welcome to another episode. We're going to be reading through letters that are dated. This first one is actually dated November 25th. And I know I've mentioned it before in a few other episodes about holidays in prison, and the emotions always run high. The guards don't want to be there. The inmates definitely don't want to be there. And it's just a tense time in prison. There's a lot of emotions. People missing their family, missing their friends, their loved ones, their girl, all of it. One of the questions that I've had from people before is, how quiet is it? And does the quietness drive you crazy in solitary confinement? Well, welcome to this first letter here. Let's go. Letters from lockdown. This first letter starts off here. Hey, Mom and Dad, how are you? Good here. It was nice to speak with you earlier, as hearing your voices was a definite welcome over the incessant, mindless chatter that I'm subjected to daily. Maybe that was the thorn in Paul's flesh that he asked for deliverance from. So, for those of you who may not be familiar with this whole thorn in the flesh thing or whatever that means, here's some context on that. So, this is 2 Corinthians chapter 12. He's saying, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this. So this starts in here around verse 7. It says, so to keep me from being conceited because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weakness, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weakness, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. So that's some context there with the whole thorn in the flesh thing. People a lot of times think the hole or solitary confinement is this really quiet place. And I'm going to be the first one to tell you it is not. I found this 2-minute video online that really displayed really how quiet solitary confinement can be. So I'm going to play this video for you now, and then I'll come back on the other side and talk to you about some of the things that were going on in my unit. Okay, so now that was 2 minutes. 2 minutes of that. How did that make you feel during that 2 minutes? See, now that was the kind of thing that happened regularly. I mean, that was one of the most surprising things to me was how loud it would get. There were guys that would take these hard plastic cups that we had to use for drinking or if we went to chow or anything like that. It was like a coffee mug, but it was just this hard plastic cup. And guys would take that cup and bang as hard as they could against their stainless steel toilet. We had like these toilets that had the toilet and the sink. I'll show a picture of one here, but they would literally just bang as hard as they could with these cups. And it would be so bad. It would just echo throughout the tier because everything in that tier, remember, is just concrete and metal doors. Sounds just travel and echo. I mean, it got to be pretty bad. There were days where I would wake up in the morning and it would just be a constant somebody taking their cup, banging against the toilet, banging against the door, yelling outside of their tier, just all sorts of stuff. I'll continue on here with the letter. It says, I listened to two guys chat for over an hour the other day about their supposed meaning of life, which ended up being fornication with as many women as possible and making money. My heart really goes out to some of these guys as there's no possible chance for exposure to a better alternative where they are at right now. That was the thing because sound traveled so much. I mean, you would never see another human being, but you would have guys that were talking to each other from one cell to another cell and just yelling out, their entire conversation. So, for me to be kind of snooping in on a conversation, I mean, it wasn't that hard to snoop in on a conversation. Yeah, I mean, it's right outside your door and it's all the time. So, I tried very hard. One of the things that I promised myself when I got locked up was I wasn't going to talk about my crimes in a way where it was glorifying them or justifying them or anything like that. Because ultimately, my crimes had taken me out of society, had landed me in that box. Like my literal best efforts at life had landed me in prison for 3 to 10 years. So, it wasn't anything really to be proud of. And there were a lot of people telling war stories about their life, about things that they used to do. We call them war stories, but it's just stories of what you were doing on the streets. And sometimes people would talk about their crimes and the things that they were involved in a way that really just made it sound like that's what they wanted to do when they got out. And I knew I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to go back to being a drug addict. I didn't want to go back to stealing credit cards and writing checks out of other people's accounts and looking over my shoulder every single minute. I mean, it's no way to live life there outside, and it's no way to live life because of those actions being incarcerated. I mean, what are you trading your life for? That's really what I started to ask myself. I'm trading time in my life, these big moments in my life, family birthdays and weddings and all the other fun stuff. My kids growing up, I still had two sons that were going through life and I'm not there and I'm trading it all for these kind of behaviors. That was really the point that I started to come to. Like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Anyway, how was Thanksgiving? Sorry I couldn't get the turkey or ham this year. I only have so many tricks up my sleeve. Our dinner here was marginal but plenty. On holidays like this, they usually feed us breakfast on time, feed us dinner at lunchtime, and then they give us a good sized sack lunch to eat for dinner. The highlight for me on this year's meal was the cinnamon roll that they included in our sack lunch, fresh baked with raisins and lots of frosting. Very good. It's little things like that, man, that would totally change your trajectory in your day. I mean, you're in solitary confinement, you got nothing going on, and you get your sack lunch that gives you the cinnamon roll that's got all this frosting and raisins, and it just tastes like somebody cared. That's what can make or break your day, right? Just little things like that. I thought you both might enjoy the enclosed articles, Mom, the church music one, and Dad, the Verlander story. I would look for things inside of USA Today that I would love to have a conversation with my parents about. And that's one way to kind of have conversation with somebody that's currently incarcerated. I would send my parents stuff. They would send me articles. I knew my dad was into the Tigers and loved Justin Verlander. And my mom is a church organist. So, it's always nice to connect on some level. And if hey, these people are interested in this, then, looking up articles and just trying to start conversation. But you see, here's that longing to connect again, right? I just want to connect with you. I don't care what level. I'm going to look in the newspaper. And if I find something that I know you might be interested in, then I want to send that to you because maybe that will start conversation. Maybe that will keep you conversating with me because I'm on year 2 at this point and didn't really have a bunch of people that were writing back and forth. And that's okay. I needed to focus right where I was at. It's funny how bellicose people can get over an opinion on how to worship. Here we go again with the thesaurus. If you haven't seen some of my previous episodes, you know that I am a geek when it comes to the words. And when I was inside of my solitary confinement cell, I had a thesaurus and I had the USA Today, which I did all of the crossword puzzles and stuff like that. So here I am with a thesaurus and yeah, all these big words and all this kind of stuff. It's not how I talk really, but that's the result of not having anybody really to have a conversation with. So that's kind of where I was at. I think it's much more about the status of the worshiper's heart versus the means or the method of worship. In the end, don't you think God is going to be more disappointed with us getting caught up over worship semantics instead of just worshiping and, being good examples, helping others? Could all of this dissension in the church merely be a clever diversion on the part of the devil over items that he knows that we may hold sacrosanct? Again, here we go with the sacrosanct. I mean, legitimately, I'm not even really sure what that means. So, but I threw it down on paper at that point in my life. So here we go, which ultimately makes the church weaker once divided. Granted, there are some fundamental core issues that need to be in alignment across the board, but on the rest, can't different schools of thought be celebrated for the individuality that our Father created each and every one of us with? The devil will always use a grain of truth when tempting and appeal to the carnal desires of pride and greed, planting thoughts of my way is better, and we would be better off as a group without this. That's all for my theological viewpoints on that. And, it's true though. If you look at a lot of this, there's so many different denominations and so many different angles and stuff. And everybody wants to plant a flag and say, mine is the right way or mine is the only way. And really, I believe that our God is much bigger than that. I switched my schedule around a bit and I've been staying up quite late, usually between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., as it is so much quieter at night than during the day. Perfect time to read, write, and do my Bible studies. When I wake up for breakfast, I usually eat half and then put half in my Tupperware bowl, put my earplugs in, and go right back to sleep. I have a neighbor who's a white guy on the same schedule as me about 4 doors down. I pitched in on the spread tonight and I got 3 burritos and some leftovers. He can order food as he is on administrative segregation. On disciplinary segregation, you can only order hygiene and correspondence materials, and that's what I was on. So he was like 4 doors down from me. We have the way that you hook up and connect. Like you're probably wondering, well, if I don't have any contact with this person, how was I getting food from him? So there was room underneath the door. There's probably maybe about an inch and a half or something like that underneath our door. And we would make these things out of cardboard and some stickers and toothpaste and whatever. And you make like this thing that slides on the ground. It's maybe about like this big. And you would poke a hole in it. Then one of the things that we would do for string is we would take a pencil, rip apart our mattress a little bit, and they had like this nylon cord that was inside that basically they were threaded that made the mattress up. So you just rip one of those cords out and keep on ripping. And, after you do that 8, 10 times or something like that, then you've got about 30 or 40 feet of this nylon string that's very strong. You tie it all together. Sometimes you braid the ends of it, whatever, just for strength. And then you tie it to the end of that car. People called them cars. They called it Cadillacing because, I mean, you'd be like shooting this car from your house to someone else's house. This guy was 4 doors down. So what I had to do is get down on the ground, and then I would shoot my car out so it would land kind of in front of his house. And then I would kind of pull on my string so that it was, so that it was tight and it was down. And then he would shoot his car out so it went over mine. And then I would kind of lift my string up a little bit. He would pull his car back and it would hook that on, right? So then he would hook me into his house, pull my car over there. He would have like a Dorito bag or something like that he would put the food that he was making for me in, seal it up, and then he would just take the string, wrap it around that burrito, and make sure that it could fit underneath the door. And then I would pull it over to my place, pull the burrito out, and then we would send it back. And then, when I was done getting my food, I was done. But that's how we got food back and forth. And now that I look back on it, I'm like, I never even knew who this person was that I'm getting food from. I'm just trusting, like I'm just putting some food in my mouth. I mean, would I do it again? Probably. But it's, you look back at things that you do now and, I just kind of shake my head like, wow, I was pretty trusting when I got back there. So this was definitely a blessing to eat something different than the state food. Although, as I have said before, it's not all bad here at this prison. Definitely a step up from High Desert State Prison. The COs here hate doing their job, i.e. bringing us to the shower every 3 days, bringing us outside the yard in the morning, etc., that many of them will raid your cell and tear it apart while you're out there, which makes you not even want to go. I mentioned this in the last video that I did. Some of the COs, and again, like I said before, not all, but some of them would definitely make your life as hard as possible. I haven't even been out of my cell again for about a week. So I do my workouts in the cell as well as shower or bird bath is what we called it. So I'm thankful I don't have claustrophobia. It just sucks having your cell ransacked, so the majority of the guys simply forego their entitlements to not have to worry about that. I kind of know which COs are more apt to search, so I'd plan my days around them. At the end of your call, you were asking about blankets. As soon as I get up to GP, general population, you can send a clothing package like you've done before, and the only items I want or need are sweatpants, blanket, sheets, tennis shoes, and maybe some boxers or socks. I'll let you know when the time comes. My shoes are holding in there, but have definitely seen better days. Part of the front is plastic and has now separated from the sole of the shoe. The other part is leather and is holding okay because I sewed it before coming up here. So this next section, I'm going to be talking about some things that were happening back in 2011. So the whole ordeal with Jerry Sandusky from Penn State is quite disturbing. From the photos in the paper, you can tell that he's still in denial and clouded over about getting caught and finally having to own up to his actions that seem to keep proliferating. I mean, again, with the thesaurus words, I mean, we are going strong for the 4 and 5 syllables here. I have heard a family member has now come forth as well that he abused. Sad. A terrible demon to have to deal with. Prison time for guys like that is not fun at all, as not only do the inmates make life difficult, but many COs take part as well. I remember when I was in the kitchen, a guy dropped a pan full of chicken patties, and the CO that was nearby had us put all of the patties back in the pan off of the floor, and then brought that pan down to the line that was serving PCs, protective custody inmates. It's crazy. Like, if you look at guys who have committed some seriously heinous crimes, many of them seem as if their eyes and brain is clouded over by rationalization of whatever was their pretext for their crime. Now, that whole thing, that really happened. I mean, I remember that pan of chicken patties going all over the place. And then he's like, just go bring it down to the protective custodies. You know, do I agree with it? No. Does it happen? Absolutely. Every yard is different. So I can only speak to how the yard was where I was at. But in Nevada, people that had a sex offense charge, it was not good for them. I have seen stabbings, I have seen fights, I have seen people just lose their mind over somebody with those charges being on the same tier. So, it gets handled by a lot of the guys that are there. And unfortunately, like I've seen it where it ended in some guy dying, because he was on the wrong yard. And that's real stuff when you see that happen. That guy, I'm sure, was just trying to do his time and get out. It's not for me to pass judgment. In my book, a sin is a sin is a sin. And I know that some of them are more socially acceptable than others. But when you really boil it down, everybody's got their thing that they're dealing with and that they're trying to just get past. So it was something, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, kind of how I had to come to terms with how I was dealing with people that maybe had those offenses while I was incarcerated, because you really had to be careful. That's really the best I can say. So, but to close this letter up here, it says, I will close with Genesis 35, 2-3 out of the Message version. Jacob told his family and all of those who lived with him, throw out all the alien gods which you have, take a good bath, and put on some clean clothes. We are going to Bethel. I'm going to build an altar there to the God who answered me when I was in trouble and stuck with me everywhere that I've gone since. The other quirky thing that I thought about recently as I'm reading through Genesis, Exodus, and now Leviticus again, is that worship services back in the day had to have been a bloody mess, slaughtering all of those animals, scrubbing their innards, burning hair, and not to mention the pile of bones and carcasses that don't take long to draw maggots. Thank God for a nice church, a pew, an organ, and a Psalter hymnal, huh? I love you both, and I'll write again soon. Again, it was good to talk to you earlier today. Hopefully soon that will be on more of a frequent basis. Love, Robert. So that's the end of this letter. This one's dated again November 25th of 2011, right around the Thanksgiving time, just trying to get through the holidays, knowing that I can't make another phone call for a month because we were allowed one 15-minute phone call for the month. Just wanted to connect with people. I mean, you can hear it inside of some of the threads in this letter, like, me sending my parents an article that I read that I thought might spark their interest and maybe encourage conversation back with me. You know, Talking about some of the mindless chatter and how that's starting to annoy me. Like I said before, the whole emotion thing really ramps up around the holidays. And so you have everybody that's just kind of feeding off, and just the energy in the whole tier is just a little different. But that's, the things that you have to go through and get through. The earplugs for me, oh man, those were a lifesaver. And I loved making little connections with people that were a couple doors down. I mean, if it even is something as simple as eating a burrito changes the whole outlook of your day, so little things like that to just try to help you get through. I hope you were blessed today by these letters. Thanks for joining along today. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to stay up on any new upcoming episodes. The next episode that I'm going to be doing with the letters, I'm going to be talking about a guy who decided to flood his cell. That's right. I'm going to go through step by step how this guy decided to get water in his cell about knee deep, and then he added something to the water to make everybody's life completely miserable that was trying to clean up after him. Because remember, there's no inmate movement on the tier that we're on. I'll drop a picture of the tier here. There's no inmate movement on there. So anything that flooded out had to be cleaned up by the COs. And this guy knew it. So I'll talk more about that in the next one, but it was great to have you along. Again, subscribe, like, comment, share. I appreciate all the interaction. You guys have been great. I appreciate the questions, very humbling. And I just hope to offer a little window into what it was like going through this crazy experience, how I got to the other side, and just offer anybody out there that's going through a tough time right now just a little bit of hope and encouragement that you too can get to the other side. So be blessed and be a blessing wherever you're at.